Maximum power theorem does not only apply to the DC circuits. In fact, its application for the AC circuits is slightly more confusing because of this conjugate that comes into play. So if we have an AC circuit, as I have explained, the first step that we need to do is to convert that into RMS. So if we have a voltage source, convert that into RMS from the time domain. If we have impedances, convert them into our complex representation, whether you're talking about the rectangular form or the polar form. Once the entire circuit is in the form of RMS, in the form of complex numbers, in the form of polar form, then we can directly apply all of our circuit analysis tools, whether we are talking about voltage drop, current divider, Thevenin, Norton, superposition, source transformation, anything and everything. But the key step is to make sure that we properly convert that into RMS. We convert our AC system into its complex representation. Okay, so let us take a look at this practice problem. I have an AC circuit and I would like to connect a load to this AC circuit. And the question is basically asking to figure out the value of this ZL that will guarantee maximum power transfer to the ZL. Okay, now we need to be a little bit careful over here because we have an AC setup instead of DC. There's conjugate that will come into play. To make our life easier, we can call this particular setup as Z1, one block of impedance, okay? And we can call this block as Z2. Now, one of the things that confuses a lot of students is the representation of reactances. Reactances can be a little bit confusing, okay? Because sometimes they are just represented, especially for the capacitor. Sometimes there's a negative sign built into it, just like the reference handbook presents it. And in some cases, which a lot of textbooks do, they actually don't opt for the negative sign to be included in the capacitor's reactance. So let me explain you. Typically, our impedance is simply Z is equal to R plus JX. All right. Now, this is impedance, this is resistance, and this is reactance. I have not basically assigned the reactance as capacitive or inductive yet, right? So let's say if I have a purely resistive load, then what ends up happening is that it becomes R plus J0. So this is simply equal to R. And this is actually summarized in the FE Electrical and P Power reference handbooks. So there is no reactive component, there's no imaginary component, there's no reactance when we're talking about a purely resistive element. Okay, now let us take a look at L, inductor. So inductor, strictly speaking, has no resistance. An ideal inductor at least has no resistance. So we mute the R portion of the inductor, and what we do is that we leave it as JXL. Now the XL, the reactance of an inductor, is going to open up, okay, as omega L. Okay, so for the inductor, this portion that we see over here is positive. So inductor is also relatively easy, not a big problem. When we look at the capacitor, this is where things become interesting because ZC, again, ideally will not have any resistance and it will have 1 divided by j omega c. But this is not the standard form of our complex representation. It is not the standard form of a plus bj, the rectangular form. So if I want to bring this into a standard form, I'm going to multiply this with j and divide this by j. What ends up happening is that I end up with j multiplied by j multiplied by 1 divided by j square omega c. Okay, and this basically becomes j 1 divided by j square is minus 1 minus omega c. Okay, now this is the reason why if you look at the FE Electrical reference handbook, P Power reference handbook, they show this as minus omega c, okay, for the reactance for the XC component. Now, in this scenario, the way that XC is represented is simple scalar 8 ohms. And when we build up our Z1, you have to be mindful of the fact that the imaginary component, because of this negative sign over here, you need to insert this negative sign. So this is a little bit of careful handling that you have to do while you're dealing with the AC circuits, and the sign and polarity and the angles and directions become a little bit more trickier. Okay, so I hope this is clearer. And when you convert this into the polar form, this is the angle that you're going to get, and you can simply punch this in the calculator, not a big deal. As far as XL is concerned, as I told you, there is no additional manipulation or handling or careful attention that you have to pay. So the 8 ohms that you see, the reactance, can simply slide in here, and that will give you J times 8 ohms. Okay. Now we have these two impedances constructed. We are going to follow two steps. There are two unknowns that we need to figure out. R Thevenin for the DC, which becomes Z Thevenin for your AC. And the other thing is our V Thevenin, which basically is the same. So if we have these two terminals, right, this helps me identify my A and B, right? And I am going to, for a second, assume that this does not exist. I'm going to bring this back into play when we are setting up our Thevenin equivalent circuit. So Z Thevenin over here is simply the parallel arrangement of Z1 and Z2. This guy is shorted, and handle this very carefully, because whenever you're dealing with the complex numbers, the angles become a little bit tricky. Okay, so when we figure this out, we realize that, okay, with Z Thevenin, I should say, Z Thevenin, sorry, yeah. So Z Thevenin, notice, is 13.33, 36.87. So what I'm doing over here, telling myself that my Z load is going to be exactly like this, but notice there's a plus sign over here for the angle. I'm going to flip that to the negative sign, because the requirement is that Z load for the AC systems is going to be equal to Z Thevenin conjugate. So this additional step that you see over here is because of that conjugate. Now, if this is a FE level problem, most likely you'll probably just be asked to sort of calculate this, because as you can see, this itself takes a little bit of time setting this up, especially when you're dealing with AC circuits. There's angles involved and whatnot, right? But they can go one step further and ask you for the power transfer. Now, if they are asking you for power transfer, then what you need to do is you need to figure out the V Thevenin as well, because that formula makes use of V Thevenin. Okay. And for V Thevenin, we are again going to work with our terminals. So as you can see, it is very, very obvious that the Thevenin voltage is dropping across the Z2. So I'm going to use the voltage divider formula, while keeping in mind that I'm actually dealing with what? I'm dealing with complex numbers, okay? Don't just simply use the magnitudes, 8 ohms, 9 volts, 8 ohms, 6 ohms, and so on. You actually have to properly account for all the phase angles, all the imaginary components, in order to get the right answer. Otherwise, your magnitude may be fairly close, but your phase angle is going to be off, and that can be problematic. Okay. So whenever you're dealing with AC systems, I tell my students in FE electrical as well as P power, don't cut any corners, and always use phasors. Always use RMS quantities, because then the chances of you making mistakes are going to be very low. In terms of using the values for P max, we do make use of just the magnitude. So the magnitude of E Thevenin and the magnitude of R. Now the magnitude of R, it can be a little bit confusing, because I see students using the magnitude of Z Thevenin in this equation, which is misleading. It is inaccurate. What we need to do over here is we need to do 13.33 cosine of 36.87. And that's the reason why I tell all of my electrical and computer exam prep students and the P power students that whenever you're dealing with the AC circuits, it's extremely important for us to actually make use of the phase angles, make use of the complex quantities and the phasors, because then you're going to avoid these type of mistakes. So the 10.66 that you see over here is actually coming out of the 13.33 cosine of 36.87. And it's true that the power is a scalar quantity, so it really does not really depend on the phase angles, but as you can see, indirectly it does, because we end up using R instead of Thevenin. And that gives us this value, 3.38 watts. So if you're given an AC setup and you're being asked to figure out the value of the impedance that will help you deliver maximum power to the load impedance, then this is the approach that you're going to take, and that will basically allow you to get the job done. So there are several pitfalls when we're dealing with the AC circuits, and the conjugate comes into play, the phase angles come into play, the actual equation comes into play. So that's why we have to be extremely careful with this. I hope you guys found this session helpful, and we use a first principle approach. What sometimes gets missed in between the lines is what is really the maximum power transfer theorem doing? In simple terms, it is basically allowing us to figure out the selection. If we have, let's say, a bunch of resistors on a table and we want to pick one of the resistors or one of the impedances to select it as our load impedance, then which one should we select? And if the condition is maximum efficiency or maximum power transfer to the end load, then we are basically going to select the one that is equal to R Thevenin or that is equal to the Z Thevenin, and we handle the conjugate carefully. And I hope that you found this this is what I call as level 3 understanding, first principle approach. And when you tackle every single topic for FE electrical and computer exam, the P power exam, it becomes a lot more helpful, especially for the P power exam. I'll tell you up front that if the small building blocks are shaky as you're working through, and that really starts with FE electrical, if they are not based on strong foundation, then it sort of amplifies when you get to the P power exam preparation. And at that stage, you really don't have too much time because of the new content that you have to cover to really go back. So it really drags out your preparation and makes it a lot more frustrating. If you found this helpful and are interested in an effective and efficient exam preparation resource, feel free to visit my website, studyforfe.com. It will save you time, hopefully stress and frustration, and will give you the confidence going into the actual exam. And at the end of the day, learning can be done all by, our own selves. But learning alone can sometimes look something like this, right? But if you're using an effective exam prep resource with a mentor, with guidance, with structure, then it can be a little bit easier, right? So feel free to check out my website, www.studyforfe.com. Whether you're preparing for FE electrical and computer or P power, you'll find the on-demand format. You'll find the on-demand plus live training format. In the on-demand plus live training format, essentially, I expect students to go through the lectures and quizzes using the on-demand course content. On a weekly basis, I release new homework assignments, and then the solutions for those homework assignments are provided, and then I get together on a live call, and then we do a holistic overview. There's also support structure in the form of a community access, which is moderated by myself and my two teaching assistants. And you can ask any questions, and within a matter of hours, you can get a very quick response. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, and feel free to reach out in case of any questions. Thank you. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. On a weekly basis, I'm creating content for FE electrical and P power exam preparation. I also discuss topics related to electrical engineering with a focus on power systems engineering. If you'd like to learn more about my FE electrical and P power exam preparation programs, please visit my website, studyforfe.com.